Few teams in the NHL made as many dramatic changes as the Florida Panthers. Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers has been to training camp, and he has this report on all things Florida Panthers.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin with you here. So glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez. And Armando, training camp is underway, and you've been there. New coach in Paul Maurice, your first impression from being at training camp?
Gil, thank you so much for having me on the show once again to talk all things Florida Panthers. And yeah, I was able to attend Florida Panthers Media Day in person, as well as the first day of practice for the Florida Panthers. And really, what's really stood out about me really is Matthew Kuchar, of course, for me is second, but number one has been Paul Maurice and the messaging, and of course the experience that has come along with Paul Maurice, and also talking about how he's been able to relate to players. And really from the start, from Media Day, just asking a simple question about everything about what Andrew Brunette did previously with Sergei Bobrovsky, talking about things off the ice, especially going back to Russia. Paul Maurice spoke about how important it is to relate to players and talk about mental health, something that doesn't really get talked about in our society these days. And Paul Maurice says that one thing that's very important is to talk about the mental health of these players. But going to the on the ice things for the Panthers, he has put a lot of players who have been very familiar together, mostly, at least when I saw on the first day of practice, a lot of 2-on-2 rushes and a few 1-on-1s. And then when they do rushes with actual forward lines, it's always someone different on as far as the third person. And of course, there's prospects there. Of course, there's players who are new to the Panthers as well. So he's been putting a lot of players who have been familiar with one another. We've seen Barkov and Verhaeghe together. We've seen Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk together, which they go back to their Calgary days as well. So that's really what the mix has been for Paul Maurice very early.
Your first impressions of Tkachuk and what he adds to the mix here?
It was good energy in practice in the first day of training camp. Even when there is a rush that they are conducting, and even when a player strips the puck on a poke check as well, there's a little bit of a friendly chirping going on back and forth. And of course, that they've had informal skates for 2 weeks prior to training camp, and of course there's a little bit of friendly chirping, but I get that vibe of they're congratulating them on, okay, that was a good play, but know that I'm gonna try to score on you the next go round. And that's that friendly competition within the team of like trying to make it. And it's just it's a little bit of he has a little pep in his step. Of course, that has gone back to all the way to his days in Calgary, but also going back to Paul Maurice, he said that Matthew Tkachuk just needs to be Matthew, and not everybody has to be exactly like him. And while I do agree with that, there seems to be something that people want to feed off that in practice for Matthew Tkachuk.
Interesting. One player who the team is going to have to replace is Mackenzie Weegar. Who do you see stepping into that role as the top defenseman?
It's definitely Gustav Forsling for the Panthers. He was a waiver claim off of Carolina just in January of 2021. The coaching staff and the front office gave him a chance, and he goes all the way from that to number one pair defenseman. And he's a great puck mover, a very fast skater. He's very fast with switching direction, especially a rush going the other way. And he's had a little bit of time with Aaron Ekblad a little bit throughout the start of training camp, and it was the most anticipated pairing for the Panthers coming in. Of course, there's a little bit of veterans on the older side in the middle and bottom pairs with a Mark Stahl and a Radko Gudas, who's in a contract year as well. And really, my focus is more on the middle and bottom pairings for the Panthers, because we have a young guy in Lucas Carlson who's like in his mid-20s. It was part of the trade for Henrik Borgstrom going to Chicago and dumping the contract of Brett Connolly, and that was at the time seen maybe as like AHL debt for the Panthers, but now there's a great opportunity for a consistent stay. And of course, the seventh defenseman for this Florida Panthers team, I really do believe that Matt Kiersted has a great chance to make this Florida Panthers roster. And ask the guys over at Locked On Senators, they're very familiar with Matt Kiersted as well, because he played with Jake Sanderson over in the University of North Dakota. And back in like April of 2021, he was a guy that had quite a few offers on the table as somebody who went undrafted, and he chose the Florida Panthers. So a little bit of time in Charlotte last year, now gets a two-year deal, which this year is a two-way part, and then next year will be one-way. And this was before a trade for Mackenzie Weegar even happens. Like, okay, if he struggles a little bit on the NHL level, okay, send him down. Doesn't have to go through waivers. And then the next year, while the Panthers also will have $15 million in cap space to make a move for a defenseman to add to the middle pairing or even the top pair, that's also a way for Kiersted to, okay, this is a year to grow more as a defenseman, but next year could be your chance to really stay on this roster full time.
Talk to me a little bit about the goaltending situation. How do you envision the Panthers dividing the work?
Of course, Spencer Knight is going to get more of a workload for the Panthers more this season, as this is going to be the last year of his ELC. One thing we already know is this: by next year, the Florida Panthers are likely going to have the most expensive goalie tandem in the NHL. It's just a given, and we are already anticipating that based on what Jake Ottinger made on his new contract, making around $4 million AAV. Unless Spencer Knight gets a huge workload, he's not gonna have that much of a cap hit for next season. So we're thinking about seeing like 2.5 to 3.5, somewhere in there, but not 4. So they're already gonna have that expensive tandem. But as far as this season, it's more of a detriment to this team, and there's going to be more damage on this team if Sergei Bobrovsky has a bad season versus if Spencer Knight has a bad season. If Spencer Knight has a bad season, of course, there's still time. You're still going to give him a bridge deal regardless. You're still going to give him more reps because it takes a while. Meanwhile, but if Sergei Bobrovsky has a bad season and Spencer Knight ends up being the guy, then you're going to have a $10 million a year backup and a really tough contract to try to trade. And the most encouraging, if the Florida Panthers want to have a great present and a great future, Sergei Bobrovsky is going to have to continue to play at the level that he did last year. And it was a very, very encouraging third year of the deal from compared to the first 2 years. So very encouraging for Sergei Bobrovsky. And the best part about it all was he left a great lasting impression on his third season, that he was the least of the Florida Panthers' problems. Him and Carter Verhaeghe were the MVPs of the Florida Panthers during their 10 playoff games.
No question about that. Armando, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
They can follow me personally on Twitter at MondoMan12. They can follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And it's been a fun first few days being down there in Coral Springs at the Ice Den covering the Panthers. And you're likely going to see me more in person. Definitely going to try to make the first home game against the Philadelphia Flyers on October 19th. So there's going to be a lot of coverage on this Florida Panthers team. We're growing the YouTube channel. Let's help us get to 200 subscribers by the first game of the season against Gil Martin's New York Islanders by October 13th. So help Locked On Panthers reach 200 subscribers on YouTube.
All right, Armando, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you as always, Gil.
Today's sponsor has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because I'm not a great pill taker, and I didn't want to have to take so many pills in order to get the nutrition and vitamins that I need. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All these things. And look, it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.